Yo, my name is Big Lou, and you are now listening to Go Produce. We are the show that explores how music industry professionals turn their passions into profit. If you want to learn more about how you can build a lucrative career through public relations and as an author, then this episode is for you. Thank you, Factor, for funding part of this initiative. Today's theme is what path led this lad from the streets of Eglinton Avenue West, where Toronto hip-hop was born, to the new professional music university degree program at Ryerson University. Our guest today is Mr. Dalton Higgins. He is a leading Toronto-based PR strategist and publicist, and author of 6 books, a festival producer, a national magazine award-winning print journalist and TV radio podcast personality, and Ryerson University's music professional in residence. His active roster includes clients that have won a wide range of awards and accolades, including the Grammy Awards, the BET Awards, the Mercury Prize, the Emmy Awards, the Juno Awards, and more. Ladies and gentlemen, I bring you Dalton Higgins.
Hey, how's it going?
We're doing spectacular, Dalton. Thank you so much for being here. I want you to know that we do very much appreciate your time, so let's make the most of it and go produce. Sound good?
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
No problem. It's an honor. The first segment of the show is called The Basics. All right, Dalton. So we like to slide things in nice and easily with the basics. And essentially, moving forward, we want to be on the same page. So that's what we establish here. With that said, our first question is, what's your first musical memory?
My first musical memory is listening to my very Jamaican father bring home records from a record store on Eglinton Avenue West, which is a neighborhood in Toronto that is affectionately referred to as Little Jamaica. My parents came here from Jamaica in the late 60s, and what he used to do with his disposable income, you go to work, you get your paycheck, because he used to buy records. So he would bring home vinyl pretty much every Friday, new slabs of vinyl. Now, this would be 45 inches, all right, because we're talking way back in the days, right? I'm Generation X. I'm a little old school, you know what I mean? So 45 platters, and a lot of roots reggae. So hearing Gregory Isaacs and hearing, certainly things like Bob Marley, all that. My brain is I'm like a music encyclopedia because of that. Is that he used to bring home music every Friday for eons. So that's my first musical memories. My father bringing home records when I'm a little wee tiny thing.
Yeah.
Having him play music really loud in my house.
Wow. It almost became ritualistic in a sense, because the Friday came along and you almost anticipate the new records. Did you find yourself excluding yourself from other kinds of plans because you were looking forward to this?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, here's the thing with a lot of children of immigrants, your parents are gonna, they're gonna flood you with a lot of things from their culture. Like I was born in Toronto. But, strong Jamaican household, and they're going to say, hey, listen to this reggae, listen to this cemento, listen to this ska music that we used to listen to back in the days in our time when we were your age. And you ignore much of it. You dismiss it, you slough it off, you don't take it that seriously. So that's what I did. I wasn't hugely into reggae like that. I was just like, yeah, whatever. That's stuff from back home. Jamaican culture, Caribbean culture. I can't relate to it like that because I'm in Toronto, where it's just like pop and rock and hip hop and other things, R&B. So that's what I did. I didn't readily embrace the reggae that much. It's only when I got older now when I'm like, reggae reigns supreme, right?
I like that. Not to go onto more of my story, but I'm actually from the Caribbean, and I do see a lot of crossover here with the cultural exchange. It's very cool, and I like to see how later on in life, you were able to establish a deeper appreciation for what was happening at that time when you were younger.
Yeah, I mean, can I tell you something too? I'll tell you just a tidbit. In Jamaica, my mother now, sorry, because I can't leave her out of this. My mother, she used to play country and Western, right? So country music, 24/7, okay? Now, here's the thing. A lot of people don't know this, but Jamaicans are like hardcore country music fans, like hardcore.
Come on.
So I know, as far as country music, I have all of that Conway Twitty and, Dolly Parton, I have that all in my brain too. Because my mother, in Jamaica, they listen to a lot of country music. Wow. So I know the history of country music. It's in my brain as well, in addition to reggae. It's weird.
Right. So all of this history and all of this experience, do you find obviously very much influenced yourself on your early life. Did this influence how you approached your music career?
I would say yes. I would say because I learned so much about different musics, varying music forms from my parents, firstly. And I picked a lot of it up through osmosis, right? So it's not like I'm sitting there saying, hey, I want to listen to, Conway Twitty records like 24/7. But it just happened that way. And then, and then you pick it up and then, fast forward to that same neighborhood, Eglinton Avenue West, which we're going to get into a little later on. But
for sure,
that's where some of the first record stores in Toronto music history, they're on Eglinton as far as Black music. All right. So Caribbean immigrants that came here in the 70s and the 60s, even into the early 80s, when they wanted to find calypso music, reggae music, hip hop, R&B, slow jams, they would head to Eglinton Avenue West to the few record stores that were out on Eglinton. So because I grew up out there, I sort of grew up almost like in a record store. Okay, right. So that's where the encyclopedic knowledge of music comes from. It's hanging out in record stores when I'm a little wee thing.
Right. Absorbing everything, direct result of your environment. That's very cool. Being in that environment from such a young age, what was the first lesson that the industry has taught you?
The first industry lessons taught me, I mean, this is actually not a weird story, but as far as like bootlegging records, I mean, there was some activity happening in and around, back then. Because we had heard that there was some scandal and controversy tied to, it's kind of the equivalent of like burning CDs or dubbing cassettes. Like, if you buy a cassette tape and then you like rip it, you dub it, or rip a CD. Like I go to the HMV or Tower Records, I buy a CD from The Roots or, some group you like, and then I rip it for my friend. So I was hip to some of those things. Let's just put it that way. Like back then, there was some stuff going on in the hood. Tied to that. So, as far as bootlegging, that's a big thing. It was a driver. I mean, it's a driver, and this is not specific to, the Black music experience. I've seen that, the indie rock experience, so-called indie rock experience. I've seen the pop. So I've seen a lot of that as far as how people, I guess, kind of use technology, to kind of duplicate and move music the way it needs to get moved, So, yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. Cool. And I want to ask, what first are you pursuing? But I also don't want to dive fully into the program at Ryerson quite yet. So is there anything that you're doing that is a first, that is very novel to you, that you are currently working on?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my company, so just Dalton Higgins PR, it's been around the last decade. And, we've had the opportunity to work, as you'd mentioned, just a bunch of major acts, global acts, never mind Canadian acts. So, for example, my week this week involved, there's a rapper out of the UK, out of London, England. His name is Giggs. All right. So a lot of people, So a lot of people know Giggs from, his work, obviously from his work out there, some fantastic hip hop, rap music and attached to the grime scene. But he also is on Drake's album, So Drake is arguably the most popular, artist on the planet. He and The Weeknd. And people know his work with Drake, KMT. He's been featured on Drake's record. So anyways, I'm doing a publicity plan for him in Canada. So we had him doing a bunch of interviews a couple days ago, right? So
that's awesome.
So that's kind of like my day-to-day. And then people that are into reggae or dancehall, Buju Banton, working on the 25th anniversary of his release called Till Shiloh. So lining up a bunch of interviews for that. So so I work with a lot of world-class artists from around the planet, to include Canadian acts, of course, and we're just getting the word out on there about their art, about their artistic output, musical output.
That's fascinating. Very cool. Thank you for sharing that with us. Moving swiftly forward, we've got our next segment. Pow! What's Yo Take? Dalton, and What's Your Take? I'm going to be throwing 3 semi-ridiculous perspectives at you, and ultimately, I just want your opinion so that we can hash this out. Sound good?
Of course. Perfect.
All right. Most people don't realize the power of words. What's your take on that?
Yeah, they don't. Words can hurt, inflame, insult, degrade. So they don't. Words are powerful. Words carry power, for sure.
More so than people would give credit to. There's a saying, an adage. What is the adage? Sticks and stones can break my bones, but words would never fail. What does that go like? Do you know that?
Yeah, totally. Words would
something
never
like
hurt
that. Me. But
yeah, totally.
Words
do hurt though. No, words do hurt.
Very painful.
And here's the thing, coming from, because I'm a Black guy, some people who are racialized, come from different cultures, ethnoculture groups, So we grew up learning about like, racial epithets and you know what I mean? So,
Yep.
so words do hurt, so certain words, which is a whole other conversation, but the N word, my parents' generation, obviously it's been remixed to meet the needs of the times, but no, they hurt.
Yes.
They sting like yeah, totally.
And they really do leave long-lasting impressions as well. Not only like being received from other individuals hearing these kinds of words, but the words that you say to yourself, they really propagate and then create the rest of your future, if you will. So this is where like affirmations and 100%.
They leave scars. You always hear like a woman or someone, racialized person, woman, someone or queer, and they're going to say, yeah, I got called this in grade 2, like 20 years ago. So it's obviously left some trauma and scarring, so
it
words
sticks.
do matter.
Yeah. Do you find that your love of words, I'm not putting this in your mouth, because you've got a storied career in journalism, is that what kind of drew you towards journalism? Words?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, if you talk to a lot of journalists and authors, book projects, they'll say like, I'm a glorified or glamorized storyteller, and then my vehicle or medium of choice just happens to be books. And before that, obviously newspapers and magazines, because I used to write for, magazines in the US, the Source magazine for years, Vibe magazine. So, but yeah, we're glorified storytellers. So we like telling stories. Now we do it vicariously through our subjects, oftentimes. So, you interview a celebrity or an actor, a musician, and they carry with them great stories. And then you're just trying to reframe those stories and make it suit the needs of your reading audience, so your constituents. Yeah. So yeah.
Which is an art in itself. It
truly
truly is.
Yeah. Yeah. You gotta have your own, voice, your own spin, your own unique twist. Like for example, your show, like it's totally it's good. It's great because you're doing like here's the thing. I've been interviewed a gazillion times. I got to keep it real with you. You know what I mean? That's Googleable by everybody. And people, all the big media houses. Yeah, there's every media house in Canada has interviewed me. Right? I've done NPR. And I got to tell you, some of it it's boring. It's a snooze fest, bro. They're just asking me like the same sort of redundant, very monotonous, repetitive, very cliche. This show is not cliche. It's not like you're coming at me from like I'm actually having to think. You're stimulating stuff. So that's great. So
that's awesome.
Kudos to you.
That's amazing. Thank you for the feedback. That's spectacular. Moving forward, so we keep you entertained. What you get in the streets in terms of education versus formal education is different. What's your take?
Yeah, it is different, but I think one doesn't necessarily need to undermine the other. So some of the smartest people I know, like personally, in my personal opinion, as someone who's traveled many parts of the globe and has kind of been there, done that. Most of the most smartest people I know, some of the most forward-thinking, some of the most progressive people, aren't very well educated in the formal sense. Don't have university degrees or didn't really go to college, or might have gone to college and dropped out. Kanye West college dropout. Tried it for a year or two and they were out of there. And I think that's because in many post-secondary institutions, free thinking is not rewarded. It's sort of frowned upon. And sometimes you'll find TAs and professors, like if you challenge them and sort of make them look not so smart, that reflects in your grades, and then that turns off some students and they just end up dropping out. So some of the smartest people I know personally, that could sort of dance circles around a lot of teachers in high school, professors. They dropped out of college, didn't find it challenging enough, or are not that well educated in a formal sense. And then on the flip side, others that advanced degrees, graduate programs, they've done PhDs, I don't find to be that clever, witty, insightful. That's my personal, as someone who did go to university, right?
Yeah. And then what do you find? Some people will drop out of school and not go the formal path, and they result to be very, very successful people within the world of business. For example, Kanye, as you mentioned. Do you respect that approach?
Yeah, I think if you do look at the hard evidence, if you look at the facts, the hard facts, the stats, it's going to show you that most moneyed entrepreneurs, people that become multimillionaires, billionaires, for the most part, did not go to school. Okay, so in the rap game, we want to go there. Diddy, he went to Howard, dropped out. Jay-Z did not go to and so these get billionaires. I'm talking people that make
very lucrative. Yeah,
that have generated how do we say, large amounts of revenue. generating a lot of revenue. So
Hmm.
I think, so me now personally, there's a bit of gray area. I like some parts of formal education because I like it, what it did. It gave me a bit of structure. So, for example, as a writer, people say they call themselves, I'm a writer, I'm a poet, but when you sort of when you're able to learn some of the we say like literary devices, for example, as a writer, so iambic pentameter, metaphor, simile, when you are able to apply some of those formal learning tactics and strategies, and you take that approach, and then you have this natural talent, that is not nothing to do with school, book smarts, street smarts, and when you combine those two, you cannot be stopped, honestly, right? So yeah, so that's why I said one doesn't necessarily have to undermine the other, because some people who are well educated, they frown upon people who aren't, and then people who are not so well educated in a formal sense, they kind of turn their nose at people who are. But I like to occupy the purgatory, the two. Maybe that's my thing, to be honest. Is that yeah, I can sit comfortably in certain boardrooms and also on street corners. That's kind of what I do.
But that's where great power is lied. Not so much power like, I'm so strong, whatever, but like real influence because you're getting both sides and then you're communicating to both sides as well, which is
Yeah. I have
huge.
to. I have
Yeah.
to. I find it extremely boring, if I was just occupying this one. We talk about issues around class and gender, race, sexuality, and just this idea of like this staying stuck. Like if I'm living in this neighborhood where the one percenters live, and these are the only people I know and see, like
Mm.
that's boring to me. That's just dull and uninteresting to me. So I like to see all sides of the track.
Yeah.
That's
It's
what
not
informs
real.
my art. Yeah, no, totally. It's what informs my art, my day to day, my relationships with people, relationship with my family. Yeah, I like to see the full circle, the 360.
That's awesome. And what about for your mentees? You're saying that you have a whole bunch already.
Yeah.
Do you generally steer them towards formal education, away from it, or is that just depends on them?
Yeah, it is. I'd say it's a case by case situation, but I'm big on learning, through experience, like experiential education. So it's
Yeah.
one thing for me to sit here and say, hey, this is what it's like in Brooklyn, or this was like in Melbourne, Australia. But I'm just like, hey, save up some money, take New York is a 1 hour flight, and go hang out in Brooklyn for a bit. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. So I like the experiential learning, and that's the other thing too. I think travel. One thing I've learned having traveled a lot is that's the real education. It's one thing to sit here and kind of be like, learning about Germany or West Germany, and then it's another thing to actually be there and hang out for a couple of weeks, and then get to mingle with the people, do business there. That's the real learning. You know what I mean? You can't learn that in a textbook. Let's put it that way.
Not even over a Zoom call. Not
Not
even
even
a
over
Zoom
Zoom
call.
call.
No, it's not
I'm
the same.
sorry. No.
It's yeah, it's not the same. All right. What's your take on this? Hip hop is this generation's folk music.
Yes, I would say it is, because it's something that's coming from the ground up. It's a bottom up culture. It's something that it hip hop culture is something that has been democratized. Like so the barriers to entry to rap music, to produce rap music, are so low. It's not about, like, if you study, for example, classical music, let's say, or opera. You go to the Toronto Symphony Orchestra, Canadian Opera Company. There are just so many fees and a ton of bureaucracy attached to that as far as gaining entry. So what it means is, you have to study, formally study for many years and go through this series of steps. Whereas with rap music, it's just being, smart, witty, clever, insightful, into very much into like poetry, street poetry, poetry in general. So yeah, so it is very much folk art, I think. Now the one thing too is that it's super futuristic, right? So it's kind of it's in the gray. It's a leading edge, cutting edge type of music form, that's always pointing towards the future, and it's always putting a mirror to reality, unlike other music forms. That's why I like it. That's why I like it. Like, rappers are the first people that are going to be like, hey, if administration, let's say your mayor is lousy, you live in a city and your mayor is absolutely like god awful, like a rapper is going to rap about that before anyone. They put a mirror to reality, and they're going to talk about some of the more inflammatory aspects of society as well as celebratory aspects.
Right.
Yeah.
Difficult conversations as well.
Yeah.
Why as because we're going on the futuristic approach, but also a reflection on society, why do you think hip hop transferred from poetic beauty to trashy trap?
Yeah.
Or when did this happen?
Yeah, I think there's a bit of we talk about the co-optation and the appropriation of the culture. So if we peel back the layers of the proverbial onion a bit, and if we look at the record companies, like, so, because the blame is not always, certainly always placed on the artists, but the record companies that are signing this. So, you're going to tell me now, how do we, as far as accountability, like, if an artist comes to you and is sexist, misogynist, and it's just a junk, like but you're signing it to multi-million-dollar record deals. I mean, clearly there are a bunch of other, players involved that are participating in this culture, that are co-signing this, that are funding it. They're funding the misogyny. They're funding the sexism. So, and then also too, from a media standpoint, me being a sort of semi-retired journalist, but working in PR the last 10 years, my own company, it's just like I also too I get it's a bit outraged, like how the stuff that gets picked up is oftentimes the most inflammatory material. So for example, if I service an artist that is doing, is very much into class consciousness, is an activist, is talking about environmental issues, many media outlets don't give a crap. They couldn't care less. But if I submit the next day an artist that is just degrading women and super into, like mass, like capitalism and just materialist, and just a cliche, a caricature, it's going to get picked up immediately and shared widely online, right? So I find, so there's just a lot of hypocrisy as far as the record companies, mainstream media, the types of things they choose to air and sign and co-sign and fund and support.
It's backwards.
Super backwards.
Can we argue that people make it popular like this, or is it the labels that kind of influenced it and then feed us this?
I would say we are all complicit. I would blame the fans, the audiences. Like if you're streaming a song on Spotify or Apple or wherever, Tidal, and it's like super sexist, like, yeah, so you're just feeding the monster. You know what I'm trying to say? Like, yeah, you're not that progressive and you're not anti-sexism, anti-misogyny.
Yeah.
You're just streaming it like every day, right? You're funding it.
Yeah, and you're blasting it into your head.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, and then also too, yeah, fans are complicit, and then also the artists themselves too. I'm not here to let them off the hook. Because if you're going to write songs like this, like, what were you thinking? Like this offensive garbage, right?
Yeah. And I like to tie it back to the words. The words are so powerful. You're choosing these words to express your emotion, and other people are going to pick up on this and then just drill it into their heads. Sooner or later, they're going to be thinking like this. And it really does affect societal change in the long run. It has the potential of doing so, at least.
Oh, no, it does. And a lot of, if we look at, people that give speeches and great orators, Martin Luther King, Angela Davis, Malcolm X, Marcus Garvey, like words. It's their words that moved me and compelled me to do some of the work I do, right? So that just, so I love reading great essays and stuff, essayists, James Baldwin, Ralph Ellison. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, Frantz Fanon. Like that stuff something I read in high school and university. That's what sort of shaped me into the person I am.
That's super. Have you ever had a mentee or an artist submission where you were honest about them, about how negative their content was?
Yeah. I pride myself on my ability to kind of be very objective, like journalists are supposed to be in theory, and, on paper. So be very objective, very neutral, very unbiased, nonpartisan. That's kind of how I judge and view everything. That's my point of view. So I'm very much like a journalist that way. Yeah. So I'm never here to paint pretty pictures or to, like a yes person. That's not me. I'm just going to call it as I see it, and there's an audience for that. I think that's why people buy my books and follow me on socials is I'm going to I'm going to really, you know what I mean? Put a mirror to reality. Like that's what the Kendrick post is. I'm kind of saying, Kendrick, we miss you, you're an artist that you inspire us as publicists and writers, and say, can you please come out with some new material, please?
Yeah. Do you think there's a reason why the culture shifted into accepting this kind of content as opposed to what Kendrick was putting out in the past and previous, real nice artists?
Yeah, I think there's a multi-generational disconnect. I find that in hip hop culture, once you're like, over 28, you get written off into the dustbins of history, like you're not. Whereas in other music cultures, rock, like OG culture, like I think there's a lot of information sharing that can be happening over generations. So people who are in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s can be sharing information to help grow the culture, because the culture needs to evolve, as like anything else. But I think that's one thing that I would, that's my criticism of hip hop culture is like the ageism or something, right? Where it's just like, you'll see, 21-year-old rapper or producer trying to reinvent the wheel, which you should do. That's what you do when you're 20, But at the same time, but there are just all these reservoirs of information that can be gleaned from people who have been there and done that. So it's just like, why not tap into those resources, you know?
Yeah. And even if you do refine something that has been done, you add your own personality and your character to it. It becomes yours. Like, don't just plagiarize through and through. Obviously not. But we're all influenced by one another. Even the artists back then had their influences that they drew from. So there's a heavy point there.
Yeah, but
Very
even
cool.
and they want to. The other thing too is timeless music. Like you want to make timeless anthem songs, you know. So I find again now some of the songs I quite enjoy or listen to now, but I'm not going to be listening to it like a year from now. Whereas when you grow up having consumed Prince and Michael Jackson and like some like real musicians, right, the genuine artistry, it's very tough to kind of fast forward to now and be like, I know I'm not going to be listening to Migos 2 years from now. I'm just saying, like, I like their songs, I like Quavo, but I'm not gonna. It's not gonna be some Michael Jackson effect, where it's 2 decades. It's not gonna happen.
Yeah. Do you think there is an artist today that will have that effect in hip hop? Right. Do you think that's Drake?
Yeah, I think Drake is one of those for sure. I would say even in R&B, like Daniel Caesar, like he wrote. There's like 3 songs on his debut album that I think are timeless anthems, right? Like that's just what it is. That he's gonna be collecting royalty checks like forever. And that's what I'm talking about, Daniel Caesar. That's his first album. Yeah, there's stuff on there. It's timeless. Yeah,
that's super cool. And then from publishing, PR to writing or authoring several books. Wow, that was a struggle of words. From PR to authoring 6 different books. I'll just mention them really quick, the titles, but I want to know which one was your favorite and kind of a little bit of backstory from that. So we've got Rap and Roll. We've got Far From Over, which is the first biography of superstar rapper Drake. We've got Fatherhood 4.0. We've got Hip Hop World. We've got Hip Hop. And we also have Much Master T. So which of those was your favorite?
Which was my favorite? Yeah, that's like asking me like who's my favorite child? Or something, Like, yeah, see what I mean? Like,
I had a feeling it's a difficult question.
That's right. I love them all. I love them all greatly. No, I'm being difficult, but what I would say is as far as some of the most fun books. I mean, certainly Hip Hop World is a fun one, and it's a bestseller because it's gotten some award nominations. Is because I was able to sort of compile that information that I'd gleaned from traveling different parts of the globe. And sort of capture that in book form, So when you're hanging out, for example, in Germany, Essen, Germany, and you hook up with hip hoppers there, and so that's interesting to me. Or in Paris, France, and so Hip Hop World is a fun book because it involved it's like globalization, seeing what the hip hop scene looks like globally. And then the Drake book is like, that's a really fun book, man. That's a book I implore everybody to go read. Because it's not so much about being like you don't even need to be into his music or OVO, but it just sort of talks about his story, his backstory, his narrative. It's fascinating. You know what I mean? Like, so even like somebody like, Prince, for, like it's just, he connects to so many things that people may or may not know. Like his uncle is Prince was his mentor. You know what I mean? Like Drake's uncle. Yeah, Prince used to mentor his uncle. You know what I mean? It's just like all this weird, like and then we also know, he's he's biracial, and just the whole story there being black and Jewish, kind of thing. Like he's raised by his Caucasian Jewish mother and his father from down south, the American South, African American, and so his story, is just it's fascinating. So that's a fun project for sure.
That's awesome. It's unfortunate that I have to admit this, but I came across you too recently to have read any of your books so far. I do plan on reading them. Which would you recommend I start with? I do plan on reading all of them, but where do I start?
Yeah, it might be Hip Hop World, because Hip Hop World too, I sort of go into some of the issues. I talk a bit about the usage of the N-word. So I talk about things that I think are, might be slightly degrading the culture, and I really get into it. I take a real cross section of hip hop culture. So we talk about things, gender, about the queer community's involvement. I talk about how different cultures interact with like meaning Caucasian white rapper. Like I really go in, and it's a really short read. And they're available at libraries too. Like I don't care about royalty checks and stuff like that. They're available at you can find them in the library system, right? Like for example in Toronto, like they're every library, all of these books, right? So just go take it out the library, and it costs you nothing. I love libraries, by the way, right? Because you can get information from everywhere, and it costs you nothing. You know what I mean? So it's just like, how could you despise or hate that? Free access to global information. Right?
It's a funny reason to hate. Do you find that you ever get backlash from the Black community or Black culture having fierce opinions about the N-word or degrading content?
No, I don't, because the community itself, without the support of the Black community, I would not be here or me, because I sort of write from a very, like when we all develop our own voice, and mine, there's some cultural specificity, it's kind of like my point of view is very distinct, and it's very much into the preservation and the nurturing and the support of Black community members in general, Black musicians in particular. I think it's very important that we support young Black musicians and young Black creatives in general. You can be, multidisciplinary. If you do theater, you do film, you do visual art, literature, you write, it doesn't matter. But Black artists really need support. This is before the hashtags and the Black squares and all that. I'm very a strong believer that, young Black emerging, burgeoning talents need to be supported at all levels, And the reason I say that is because even in Canada, with the anti-Black racism sort of, it cuts across, it reigns supreme. You see it everywhere. I see it in my day-to-day existence. So I think, despite you can be super accomplished and have made a lot of money, and you buck up into anti-Black racism daily, in a city, in a country like Canada. So I would say, so that's why I'm sort of framing it in that. That's my frame, that's my point of view, is that you have to support Black people. Because sometimes it's hard when you grow up in a country like Canada and you're being told, you have to work 10 times as hard. Like me as a Black guy, you're going to tell me I have to work 10 times as hard as this white guy who is maybe, has half the talent of me. Like, it's ridiculous. It's just the message that I'm sending is just or to get half the results. I have to work 10 times as hard as the white guy to get half the results. Like, what the hell's that? That's just foolishness. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
It's funny how that works. And 10 times as hard, more talent, and maybe it's just because of your name. The name gave it away, and they don't want to even give you the chance. It happens like that too sometimes. It's unfortunate.
There are a bunch. There's been a lot written on that. If your name is an ethnic sounding name or sounds that it's tied to Black or African culture, it's like you're not getting interviews. So you submit the same resume. There's a lot been written about that. Like, if you and I submitted the same resume, and you have a name that's very that's tied to European
whatever
culture,
else,
mine's very African. Yeah, I don't get called back. You do. It's just like, so there you go. What more else do you need to read? Sad.
Yes, 100%. It's happening, but thank you for the work that you're doing in terms of bringing lights to this. We've got our next segment. Our final segment is called Clear the Air. He's grumpy. He's probably napping or something in the background there.
Grumpy
in Clear the Air.
Guilty.
Grumpy sound guy. In Clear the Air, we're going to be throwing some topics in the industry or across the board that I just want some clearing of the air, for lack of better terms. That work with you?
I'm happy. I spend most of my waking hours clearing the air. So this falls
natural.
Neatly.
Awesome. Okay, so we do have a guest question. One of our fans asked you a question, so I'm just going to pull that up real quick.
Hey, this is Jim from 509 School of Hip Hop. I'm curious to know about your support system, having accomplished all that you have. Do you currently have a mentor, or have you worked with a mentor in the past? Like, who were they? I'm curious to know.
Yeah, for sure. That's a great question. And I would say that my career would not have progressed in the way it did if I didn't have a mentor. Okay. So if I'm being Dalton Higgins and trying to maneuver myself through the music industry, the publishing industry, PR, without mentorship, I'm falling flat on my face. So that kind of goes back to my earlier point around having some people around you that can share elderly sage wisdom. Those are the people that usually end up taking off, So if you look at even, the Jay-Z's of the world, the Kanye West, if you dig a little, deep enough, you're going to find that they all had mentors who kind of taught them the tricks of the trade, so to speak. So I've had a bunch of people like that. The reason even as far as generating revenue, making money, you know what I mean? Because this is a capitalist society, so you have to understand how to generate revenue to pay your bills. I've had some great people in my life. You know what I mean? Like Clifton Joseph, he used to work out at the CBC, hosting a couple shows there, and he basically told me 20 years ago all the tricks of the trade. How to deal with media when it comes to getting on air, off air, pitching stories, getting paid. He taught me some tricks, all right? Some things that I passed down to this day. Yeah, so even writers and stuff like that, some people told me, man, you have to know your worth. That's something I heard when I started writing. They said, know your worth. Don't give away your art for free. that's something that stuck with me since I was in university times. So I don't give away my art for free. So if you're coming to Dalton Higgins with you have a plan or you want to approach me or something, you're gonna have to cut a check. But that's something I learned 25 years ago, though. You see, from the OGs.
And you just implemented that right away?
I implemented it right away because
my goodness,
what is the difficulty in you? Like if you feel your art is good, if you feel you have a good podcast, if you feel you're a good broadcaster, you're a good writer, you're a good musician, you're an artist. If your art is that good, you should be getting paid for it. There should be some form of remuneration. Now, if you are feeling insecure and your art is not all that, then you can work pro bono until you're blue in the face. But if you're putting out art with high artistic integrity, you should receive some form of remuneration. So it's very simple. So from a young age, I was cranking out some very good pieces, right? If I do say so myself, not to toot my own horn, but it's some pretty top flight writing. So I need to get paid. I'm not giving to you that for free. It's just not going to happen. And I carry that to this day.
It's fair. I mean, like if someone really wanted that piece of writing for free, they could go to the next person that would do it.
That's right, exactly. And if you really want me, then you're going to pay for it, right? And if you're not that into the art or my art, then keep it moving, and get somebody some free lesser talented person to submit an essay or a book. That's fine, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, Usain Bolt's Usain Bolt's got to move, Perfect. Yes. We spoke briefly how you're a multi-hyphenate, polyglot, but at the core of it, you're a journalist at heart. However, you are so involved in many different projects. Do you ever find that you bite more off than you can chew? Clearly you're on that.
Yes, I do. I've had to learn over the years to say no because there are all these tantalizing projects that tend to hover around me because I'm around a lot of interesting people in the city, in Toronto, in the city I live, right? And it's just like, so amazing just artists are around me 24/7 ad nauseum. And it's very difficult when somebody is approaching you with this project and it's something that is going to have a really high ceiling and it, and you can predict and project that it's going to do quite well. And then not having enough bandwidth or the capacity to take it on, that stuff like kills you, So sometimes do I take on a little bit more than I can chew, bite more than I can chew? Absolutely. But I've learned to, how to say no, over the last number of years. Yeah.
Beautiful. We're reaching near the end, and I do want to touch on the professional music program at Ryerson. I've got a couple of smaller questions on there, but do you prefer if I read the description that I found so like we got that spot on and then we talk about it? We could do that.
Yeah, let's do that.
All right, so the professional music program at Ryerson, this is a one-of-a-kind program which is designed to let you tap into your passion for music and equip you with skills to thrive in the modern music industry. Develop your creativity and business savviness for careers in digital audio recording, live entertainment, entrepreneurship, and other roles across the music industry. The program exposes you to rich and diverse experiences, including music fundamentals, studio and live production, and the business of music. Located in the heart of the Canadian music industry, you will gain access to modern studios and facilities, as well as exciting internship possibilities with industry stakeholders and cutting-edge startups. That's the professional music program at Ryerson.
Yeah.
What is your role in that?
Yeah, totally. I mean, the reason I took on that role as a professional a music professional in residence is, the program is the first of its kind in Canada. Okay. And much of my career has sort of been built around embracing, innovation and, people that are forward thinking, want to move things forward instead of staying stuck in the 80s. So many aspects of the Canadian music industry feel to me stuck in the 80s. And that carries over into music education as far as post-secondary institutions. With all due respect, there are great programs out there in Canada and in Toronto in particular, but there's no other university level program like this in Canada that focuses on all aspects of music, all right? So not just performance and production, but about entrepreneurship and about technology and about learning about streaming services, DSPs, like everything that's all encompassing. Mm-hmm. And I believe that the future of the music business involves you have to have a very strong entrepreneurial bent. Okay. That's my personal opinion. So when you register in a program like this, that is truly interdisciplinary like that, and it's diverse and unique, it's in Toronto too, which is great. We know Toronto is, the most multicultural city on the planet.
It's by far. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So we're looking for it to be a magnet for talents from across Canada and the world, to be honest, that want to get a university level, degree program, right? I mean, you have programs out there where you do it, a number of months or a year. This is like a 4-year degree granting institution that you get a degree in professional music, So once you graduate from this program, you're going to be able to take on the Canadian music industry in ways that hadn't been seen before, So so that's hugely important. I find that there are all of these jobs in the industry where one can sustain oneself and pay your rent, pay your mortgage, pay your car note. But a lot of young people, a lot of teens, early 20-somethings have no idea that these jobs and careers exist, right? So these are the types of things we want to focus in the music program. So for example, being a music presenter, when I say that to people, most young people, they have no idea what that is. This idea of being able to tour acts and book acts to play at major facilities and venues. So there's an actual job category attached to that and training attached to that. So these are the types of things, right? When we talk about even getting your music out there and working at a DSP, right? Digital service provider, Spotify, Apple. There are so many jobs in these different areas of the music industry, but I get the sense, and we get the sense as people on the advisory committee and some of the staffers and professors and TAs, is just like, let's train people for these jobs that exist now and also train them for jobs that are gonna exist 5 years from now, right? So we want to be futurists. We're looking towards the future. What I find now in the Canadian music industry, it's very cliquish and stuck in the 80s, and it's not very diverse. It's singularly focused. Like when you're a rapper, let's say you're doing so-called urban music in Canada, if you do rap or R&B or any electronic-based music, what parts of the industry are set up for you in Canada? It's not a lot, So we're going to sort of take those energies and say, hey, in 2020, the biggest selling acts, it's like top 5, it's all rap and R&B. I don't know if you know this or not, right? But the top selling musics around the world, I don't mean in Canada or North America, it's just rap and R&B, right? So that's not open to debate and that's not arguable. You can just Google that right now and you're going to see Bad Bunny and J Balvin, Drake, Weeknd, that's hip hop and R&B dominate music around the world. So what types of things are we doing in the music infrastructure to support those energies, to support that diversity, to support people perhaps that want to pursue careers in these genres, although this program is not genre specific, we do everything. But how do we support, burgeoning talents that are into hip hop and want to produce? They want to be a music promoter. They want to start a record company on their own. Get public funds, private funds. Like, how do we support these people? That's what the program's here for.
It sounds like this is actually gearing people for life after university, which isn't typically what you're going to find in most academic programs. You're like very specialized to do something that you might not even get involved in after you finish your degree. However, it's so broad and so wide encompassing that it sounds almost not like a safety net. You graduate from this program, you have a career, but if you do it appropriately, you should be established.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I'll tell you a story tied to travel. So when I was hanging out in Copenhagen, so I've been to Copenhagen a couple times for an event called the World Music Expo, where people that work in the music industry in different capacities, they come to Copenhagen in this case. It's a traveling, rotating thing. So it's been held in Spain and Germany, and I've been to it in different cities. But in Copenhagen at the university level, for one, when we talk about forward-thinking cultures and communities, at the university level, they don't really offer programs or courses of study unless it directly ties to receiving gainful employment, okay? So they're not going to offer hey, we're going to do a chemical, electrical engineering program, and then you graduate and there's no jobs in that area. They don't do that in Copenhagen. Everything that you find at the college and university level is things so that you can actually get a job, or there's no point learning it, okay? It's the reason why I guess Oprah Winfrey, she used to always talk about how Copenhagen is, that's her favorite place in the world. And I got to see a bit why, they have a really great green strategy. When you get off the airport, you see like wind turbines everywhere. University is free, by the way, so it's super accessible. And people ride a lot. They ride bikes. They as far as gas, emissions, like everybody's riding everywhere. You see women going to the bar with high heels and ride. Everybody's riding. So yeah, it's just fantastic. But anyways, back to as far as industry. It is hugely important that we at Ryerson University, the professional music program, and in my capacity as a music professional resident, that we're able to connect graduates of the program, like the first cohort are going to graduate in 4 years, that they're able to connect to the partnerships that we have, right? Because the program has partnerships with Canada's leading music and entertainment organizations. You know what I mean? Like record labels, artist representation, live event producers. We're pretty well stocked there. Like, we have great support from the city of Toronto and music executives. So that's the plan, that in 4 years we can connect our graduating class, first graduate class, to these leading music and media operatives. Okay, that's the end goal. Yeah.
That's so cool. Even just hearing that, I'm super excited to see what the results will be. And 4 years is only just the beginning, but I can only imagine how excited and enthusiastic you must be about this whole experience.
Oh, for sure. I like new things. I like new shows. I like new, so the newness of it all is super exciting and stimulating.
It's spectacular. Very cool. Now we want to touch a little bit on the PR. For young professionals that may not know a whole lot about PR, can you describe what your company does for your clients?
Absolutely. So if you're, Joe artist or Joe rapper or Josephine rapper, right? Some gender balance. So what you want to do, you want to be able to sort of maximize your, so you put out some music. It can be a single, it can be a mixtape, it can be a full-length album or an EP. What you want to do is what is the point of putting out great music and art if the world doesn't know about it? Okay, so what we do is, in PR, public relations, as a publicist, I'm tasked with getting your music out there to the outside world. Now, I do that vis-a-vis getting you placements on television, so when you watch Canadian television and some American television, getting my clients on television, getting them on radio, so commercial radio, right? Private radio, also public radio. We also get them as many newspapers and magazines as we can, right? So that when people are picking up newspapers and magazines, they can read about your art. And then we have a whole digital strategy, which involves, you put out a song, we're going to get you placed on a bunch of great websites, a bunch of great blogs, and also doing interviews with great podcasts like yours, like podcasts and stuff, right? So that's what we do. So we have a sort of multi-tiered approach to getting our artists' work out there. So if you're a rapper, you're a singer, songwriter, and you have this great piece of art, it's a single, and you want the world to know more about the single, why they should mess with it, why they should stream it, we're going to get you, we don't guarantee and say, hey, every artist, we're going to get you doing all these big television shows, big radio shows, get you on the cover of newspapers and magazines or on blogs. But we do our darndest. I have a lot of super strong relationships in the industry, and I'm able to get my clients for by and large, great placements. And then that drives people to go stream their music and buy their merchandise and buy concert tickets, when society opens back up again. So that's how it goes. Here's the anecdote I'll share with you. I mean, if you can apply PR to anything in your life, never mind the arts and entertainment and sports industries. But if you're doing something really great, like let's say you have the best podcast or the best, show, best Instagram Live, best podcast in Canada, but then nobody knows about it. Like, it doesn't even matter that it's the best, you need to get it out there, get it into the media so people know that it exists, and then they can see just how great it is, right? So You can be a closet podcaster and nobody knows what the hell you're doing. Or you can be like, I need a PR strategy so people can actually tune in, get my numbers up, get my socials up, get my streams up, get my page views up, that kind of thing. So that's what we do, right? Yeah, that's what we do. Yeah, we just amplify what you're doing.
Makes sense. And I'm curious to know, how does the financial side work? Are there retainers? Are there monthly fees? Is it billed to the labels of the artist, or do you work with the artist or manager directly? What does that look like?
Yeah, totally. It's case by case, and it's pretty much all of the above. In some cases, I work with major labels in Canada, and so they pay me monthly. So what that means is I'm on retainer with them. So I receive a check from so-and-so major label every month to promote their talents that fall underneath a certain umbrella, mostly electronic-based music, so I deal with a lot of that. And I work with the major labels, and then other cases with independent artists that get funding from places like Factor. Factor-funded artists, so they'll have parked away in their budget a PR budget and marketing. So sometimes we get paid that way, and then other ways. What was the other thing you said? Yeah, we get paid in a multiplicity of ways. But it is lucrative if you know what you're doing. 100%. It can be very, very lucrative if you know what you're doing, and you have the right setup, and you can deliver. A lot of the work now over the last 5 years for me is just referrals based. Like I don't need to look for clients or work. It's just referrals based, right? If you do a good job on a project, people are just going to keep coming back for more. That's pretty much in the last 5+ years. Like I don't need to. I get queries pretty much every day is what I'm saying. So I get musicians and people every day. Like there's not a day that goes by where I don't get a query. Somebody wanting PR representation, right? So yeah.
All right. What measures do you promise the clients?
Okay, so what do I promise? Well, we promise to basically I have a massive mailing lists of, the aforementioned, television stations, radio, public and private, newspapers, magazines, blogs, podcasts. So my mailing list in itself, that's one part of what you're paying for, because I just have relationships that run far and wide, that run the gamut, as far as a lot of like all the television shows that you watch on television or radio, stations or satellite radio, like I have connections to pretty much all of them. So being able to place your song or get an interview with that blog, the likelihood of that happening is quite super strong.
That's awesome. Is there a certain threshold of success or building the client's fan base that you need to reach?
Yeah, totally. I mean, how we measure success is certainly there's more interest in the artist as far as streams, like people are actually checking out their music, streaming their music, watching their videos like on YouTube, that they're getting a lot of page views. Also things like the ultimate measure is awards, like you're getting nominated for awards, the Juno Awards, could be Grammy Awards, Polaris Prize, that you're getting some sort of, rewards there, or SOCAN Award, stuff like that. So or Prism Prize for if you do great videos. Yeah. So that's one of the measures is awards. So that's kind of it becomes part of our marketing too, is that I've worked with the Grammy Award winning artists, a bunch of Juno Award winning artists, Emmy Award, BET Awards. Yeah. I've worked with a bunch, like pretty much like, the Mercury Prize. That's kind of like my calling, one of my calling cards, that I've worked with people that have won big awards.
Yeah. All of the awards. So how good is Alan Raymond? Do you like his music?
Yeah. Alan Raymond, he's an interesting artist. Because Alan, he's kind of like, while he's been attached to sort of major labels, he's very DIY, like indie mindset, the way he moves, the way he navigates the industry. So his story is just so fascinating because he's not exactly a guy who likes doing a ton of media, to be honest. He's kind of reserved that way, keep a bit of mystery happening. But he's a guy that really built himself up from scratch, from the bottom up. And he gets a lot of streams. Like he is kind of more like the future of the music industry, because while other people are wanting to look cool on social media, on the gram, like I don't think he cares so much for that. He's more about that, like the actual business. So his streams on Spotify, like he kills a lot of artists, right? He gets a lot of streams. And the thing that he does well is as far as touring, a live show. So some acts that we run into and encounter, and you probably see them yourself, where they record great music, but they don't have a live show. They don't have a very good live show. So that means their ceiling is really low. Whereas Alan, he's on the opposite end of the spectrum, where he's constantly touring North America. He's in the States all the time, Canada. So that's kind of how you build your genuine, authentic, legitimate fan base, is by touring, right? Jumping in a van and saying, hey, I'm going to go play Saskatchewan. I'm going to play Manitoba. I'm going to play, go to Arizona, go to Idaho. I'm going to go to Utah. I'm going to go to New York, Illinois. That's what he does. So that's how he's, and if you're able to impact, let's say even 50 people per show, or 20, right? That's how you build this critical mass of followers, So there's 50 people in Chicago that like you, 50 people in Salt Lake City, and that's how you build so that's how he built his critical mass of followers across North America, by touring. Whereas some acts, they don't have good live shows. They don't know how to put together a tour. They don't have booking agents. So yeah.
Interesting. So his approach is definitely probably the more difficult path to take because of having to physically be there.
It's not more difficult. It takes a real vision. You have to have a vision, So his vision is to have a live show. He has to have a good live concert. So again, I would argue there are a lot of acts that aren't thinking that way. They're thinking that it's just, through streams and through social media that people are going to mess with me. But the artists that have a higher ceiling, they have good live shows. So I've worked with some acts that have crazy live shows, and that's why they blew up. Because their shows, when 600 people in a room, at the Mod Club, sell it out in Toronto, and it's just like people are like going nuts, mosh pits, like, yeah, they have great live shows, So yeah, that's the difference maker. Is, can you play live?
Fair. How does your approach to PR differ with someone like Alan Raymond, who is more secretive, cryptic brands, as opposed to someone like KSI, who is really out there and wants to be seen?
Yeah, totally. You have to be, the word is super strategic, KSI, because he's known, sort of branded YouTube, he's a YouTuber and all that. So with him, he didn't want to do any interviews tied to YouTubing culture, that kind of thing. He just wanted to be strictly like music media. Because he's like, okay, I'm already branded there, but people need to take me more seriously as a musician now, as a rapper. You know what I mean? And then with Alan Raymond, it's the same thing. I think he's more selective and picky as to what media outlets he chooses to express himself through. So we've done some stuff with him, like Billboard magazine. He enjoyed doing that. I've done a couple fashion things with him, magazine. and even Exclaim in Canada, but he's very more selective, I'd say. So some artists are very selective. They're not just going to do an interview because a podcast says, hey, we want to interview Alan Raymond. They reply back to me. He would decline a lot of those types of requests, right? He wants to be very specific looks, very specific media outlets he'll mess with, and others will just decline. We'll just respectfully decline.
Yeah, it's important to know what your goals are as an artist so that you can pursue that and make sure that you're not spending your time anywhere else. I want to know, how has it been working with They? There's been a big buzz around them lately, partly due to the PR strategy. What was that like?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, they are awesome. I mean, yeah, literally and figuratively, right? Yeah, they're just going to be one of those like R&B duos that people are going to be talking about like a year or two from now, and then they're going to say, "Oh, Dalton, okay, thank me later, man," because just as far as genuine like R&B, for people that are into like the real stuff, like these guys can perform live, as you see on social media. They can do live PAs, and they have, just great collaborations, man. Like Tinashe, they had a great single with her, and then they're able to mix up sort of hip hop energies as well. So on their last record, they like Juicy J, 3 6 Mafia, and these guys are just they're real performers, man. They're genuine, they're authentic, and they're like a sleeper. They're one of my sort of sleeper client picks, And I do work a lot with the labels attached to them, right? Like Rock Nation and what have you. So they're a client of mine, right? So we're able to get some stuff out there. Island Records, Rock Nation. They're direct clients of mine, right? So that's how I end up working with some of these acts, Island and Rock Nation. Yeah.
That's so cool. Last question. What happens when you have a PR issue with one of your clients? What happens first?
Right, sure. Yeah, I mean, I like to, this whole idea around transparency. I like, checking in with my clients every so often or through their management, and just to see how they're faring, how they're feeling about the output. Do they feel they're getting picked up in the right places, on the right blogs or the right podcasts requesting them for interviews? So we're always trying to, check in, and we're treating them almost like children, like our children. Like you become a family with a lot of your clients. You just end up becoming friends. You know what I mean? Like over time, because you've worked with them for so long. So you want to take care of them like you would your children or your aunts, your nephews, your nieces. Like, yeah, I don't mean that in a being smug or cute as far as the whole treating like children. I mean like as family. You treat them as family. So yeah. So always a two-way dialogue, open flow, two-way for communication is it's super key. Communication piece.
Communication is very key. And what about bad press? How do you fix those images?
Yeah. Yeah, well, they say, any press is good press, right? So I think in this day and age, if you get picked up by a tabloid, or something that is deemed scandalous or controversial, that tends to drive more traffic to your site, to the gram, and to your Spotify, and so in this day and age, and when I say bad, I mean bad if it's something like, again, we draw the line, like if it's something dealing with things that I'm bitterly opposed to, like racism, sexism, and that kind of like. No, I won't tolerate that. And in fact, I don't I can't have any clients like that, to be honest. I've had to turn down a number of clients that their material and the way they sort of maneuver the industry, it's just not, it's not progressive enough so we decline all kinds of things. Big money things too, like we get out, big money offers, but it's just like, it doesn't fit my brand and kind of where I am in my life, So yeah, so if you're like degrading women 24/7 and that's your art, then, go elsewhere. Like I'm not interested in that.
Yeah. So you don't even start working with them if you figure this out ahead of time, but have there been issues or times where you've had to drop clients because something super inappropriate happened after you started working with them?
Yeah.
No names necessary.
Nothing too inappropriate has happened, but I would say that, let's just say that when some contracts expire, I'm happy to not renew said contract. Let's just put it that way.
That's awesome. Yeah. That's awesome. Not everyone deserves another contract. Dalton, thank you so much for this time. Your energy was fantastic. Do you have any final words that you would like to share with us?
My final words, they're two words. Go produce.
I like that so much. And where can our listeners and where can our listeners find you or any of the information that you want people found?
Yeah, totally. Just get me on socials, like I have a bunch of pages, but at my name, Dalton Higgins and the number 5. So Dalton Higgins 5, just get me on socials there. And if anybody has any questions tied to the industry or publishing or just want to talk, or they're just feeling lonely during this pandemic and they just want to talk. No, I'm joking. You don't do that. I will not encourage you to do that. But yeah, you can get me on socials though. I'm pretty active on there. Yeah.
That's awesome. Dalton Higgins 5. We'll make sure to include that in the show notes as well. Next, I want to say thank you to our listeners. Thank you for tuning in and sharing this time with us. Shout out to our grumpy sound guy for having some fun with us today. Shout out to the Prevail Media Group. Without this facility, we could not make this happen. And mostly, a biggest shout out and a lot of appreciation to you, Dalton Higgins. Thank you for joining us today. We out.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening. If you found any value in this episode and you want to learn more from our content, check out our website at goproduce.ca. If you're on Instagram, check out our handle at go.produce. If you're on YouTube, subscribe. If you're on Spotify, hit download. If you're on Apple Music, leave a review. This will all help us grow our community. I'm Big Lou, and this is Go Produce.